The only way to catch Donald Trump is to actually go after Donald Trump. And I think I'm the only candidate in this race who's actually doing that. You know, I heard Governor Haley yesterday say, that he's the right president for the right time, and that drama just seems to follow him as if he's an innocent victim in that. Like, when you subvert the Constitution, some drama will ensue. For Governor Haley to act as if Donald Trump is some kind of innocent victim is a problem, because she's trying to be everything to everybody, and you can't.
Nikki Haley's approach has not gotten her within 20 points of Donald Trump in the Republican primary polls, even in her own state. But it has gotten her the big endorsement of billionaire Charles Koch's political network. Back with me tonight to discuss, David Plouffe, former Obama campaign manager and senior advisor to the president, and Tim Miller, a contributor to The Bulwark and former communications director for Jeb Bush. Tim, what is your reaction to Chris Christie's comment and this big endorsement Nikki Haley got? Because, yes, she is surging, but she's got to beat Donald Trump before she faces off against Joe Biden.
Yeah, well, I think it's a lot of talk by a lot of people that are not in touch with what the Republican electorate actually wants. I agree with everything that Chris Christie said. That's not a great sign for Chris Christie, seeing as I left the Republican Party a few years ago now. And if he's trying to appeal to Republican voters, he's running into a problem, which is that Republican voters like Donald Trump. So I do agree with his strategy. I think that these candidates should go at him more aggressively. But I'm not sure if Chris Christie's approach has exactly borne fruit, if you look at the numbers. As for Haley, I think this is the more relevant question, right? Can Nikki Haley, get some momentum here and be a better mano a womano challenger against Donald Trump than Ron DeSantis was? I think she could. The problem is that the people that are backing her are not in touch with, again, what the Republican Party wants. Like, I've got a news flash for the Wall Street Journal Republicans and the Koch network Republicans. Republican voters have rejected you. They've rejected your program. They're not interested in a immigration-friendly, tax cuts for corporations type Republican program. That's not what they want. And so for them to put out this memo and announcement, to me, seems more like face-saving. If they were going to put a bunch of money in Nikki Haley's campaigns to run a bunch of negative ads attacking Donald Trump as a loser, I'd say thumbs up. Putting out a memo saying they're endorsing Nikki Haley, I think probably hurts her more than helps her.
David, what do you think? I mean, when you just see your average old really rich guy endorse someone, it's kind of funny because, like, yes, the candidate will take your money, but you have zero influence over any sort of voting block. But is the Koch money different? Because they have a lot of money and a lot of resources in key states.
Well, Stephanie, they'd have to spend it, to Tim's point. They'd have to spend it in smart ways, which I think is both negative against Trump and then contrast. I don't think a cent should be spent on positive Nikki Haley. I will say this. I mean, Donald Trump is, 9 times out of 10 times you run this race, maybe even 9.5, he's going to be the Republican nominee. But the scenario where he would lose would, it looks like it's going to be Haley, unless DeSantis has some kind of resurrection act. If she finishes, she doesn't have to win Iowa, but she's got to finish a clear, strong second. Everybody else has to drop out that night, and then she's got to go win, I think, New Hampshire and South Carolina, and Trump would still probably be the favorite then. So it's a really, really narrow path, but it's there. But it requires making the case, because even if all that happened, somehow you're the last person standing, you've won a couple of states, you've got to beat Trump in big states like Illinois, California, Florida, Michigan. The only way you're going to do that is if people think you're more electable. And I think Tim's right. You've got to make, maybe some of it can be issues, but for the most part, it's like, this guy's going to lose to Joe Biden again. I can beat him. That, I think, is the only message that has any chance of working for a Haley or a DeSantis if he somehow recovers.
All right, Tim, let's talk about us. Because most other former presidents kind of ride off into the sunset. You barely hear from them again. Donald Trump, who was a marginally failed businessman who had a 20-year-old reality show, was crushed in the last election. And since then, he continues to dominate everything. Well, at the same time, he's got 91 felony counts against him. He's about to lose his entire business. And his new favorite thing to brag about is that he's been passing dementia tests. All he did when he was president was divide us, yet he is the front runner again. Not what does this say about Donald Trump? What does it say about America?
Nothing good, Steph. It's hard to stomach, and it's hard to come to terms with, to be real honest. And I got a little tan over Thanksgiving, and did some yoga to try to meditate on that very question. And, it still has not brought me a lot of peace. So I don't think that it says anything good about us, but it is our reality. And so we have to deal with our reality. And I think there are a lot of people out there that have not really come to terms with this. They're flirting with, we might need to look at a third party candidate, or, I might not be able to vote for Joe Biden for this reason or that reason. Like Donald Trump, the man who attempted a coup that has 91 felony counts, that was a game show host before he was the president, is very likely going to be the Republican nominee. A lot of Republicans have decided that they like him, that he represents them. That is confounding to me, but it is the reality. And I think that we need to live within that reality and react to it with the seriousness that it requires.
What do you think, David?
Well, listen, I think that, it's scary. It's historically scary. That's where we are. I do think this race looks a little tighter come the spring would be my guess. Assuming it's Biden and Trump, nothing's happened to derail either one of them. I think the race is then joined. It's not, I think, a sense of, I'm not happy the way things are. Maybe Trump wasn't so bad. If the stakes are raised appropriately by Joe Biden and his campaign, by everyone who has a voice, that America will not survive 4 more years of Donald Trump. I think that race tightens up a little bit, but it's still razor thin. This is going to come down to, a percent, maybe a little bit more. That's it in 6 or 7 states. And the thing that should scare all of us is to win a presidential campaign and battleground stage, you have to do 2 things. You've got to win swing voters, moderate voters, and then you've got to do what you need to do on the turnout side. And Trump is going to get his turnout. We've seen that both in 16 and 20. His people are coming. And so I think that's the real challenge is if Joe Biden somehow doesn't hit his mark with voters under 30, the math just doesn't work. So I think all of us who are, appropriately frightened about what could happen if Donald Trump takes the oath of office again, have to do all we can to make sure that math gets a little more friendly, because there is no cavalry coming other than the voters. The only way Donald Trump is going to be stopped, to your term, Stephanie, is us.